Wednesday, October 31st, 2018, Halloween Day morning session of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaly. Fritz.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. And Commissioner Udaly wanted to be here. Unfortunately, she is sick today, so she is not able to participate. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during the City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of the testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Colleagues, I want to make just a brief comment. My recollection was 2 weeks ago when I presided over the council, we had a number of people who seemed to be willfully and deliberately testifying completely at odds with the issues that were actually being discussed. And I had to repeatedly remind people that you are to testify on the items that are being discussed in front of the council. We encourage that. We welcome it. That's what public testimony is for. My understanding is last week in my absence that continued. I want to underscore that is a complete waste of everybody's time and resources. And it puts me as the presiding officer in a position of basically having to police public testimony. I don't want to do it. I don't want you to have to do it. And I don't want to waste the public employees' times who are here as a requirement of their job to provide testimony and provide staff work, only to have people come in and behave in a very rude and inconsiderate manner of their time and the public's time. The more time that you take, the less time everybody else has to testify. And I just want to remind you that 2 weeks ago when I presided over the council, we had to limit public testimony on the last 5 items because people kept interrupting and they kept talking about things that were irrelevant to the conversation. And it robbed other people of their opportunity to be able to address the council. So again, I'm asking you, let's behave, let's act like adults. You're welcome to testify, but please follow the council rules and testify on the matter being considered before the council. We're always interested in hearing what you have to say, but it has to be germane to those items. So with that, we'll start off with communications. Could you please introduce the first individual for communications?
Item 1117, request of D. White to address council regarding federal lead and copper rule drinking water regulation being ignored.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Dee White. For over a year now, I've come here to ask that you urgently address elevated lead in water levels. You acknowledge there's no safe level of lead, yet your fix is years away. This is unacceptable. For over 20 years, you've been funding an alternative compliance to the federal lead and copper rule. No other city in the U.S. has been allowed to redefine this federal rule to their liking. No other city except Portland. In fact, in 1997, the EPA rejected your special rulemaking only to have the Oregon Health Authority quietly and perversely approve it. This antiquated alternative to the federal rule, called the Lead Hazard Reduction Program, is essentially unchanged today. It is incomprehensible that Council just last week approved more money for this alternative rule that continues to fail in best protecting our drinking water and our health. Again, the point of the chart here, all across the West, mainly the Northwest here, we're looking at the same plumbing, the same old homes and buildings, but with drastically lower levels of lead compared to Portland, which is right there in the middle. Lead is an irreversible neurotoxin. You cannot see, taste, or smell lead in water. It especially impacts pregnant women and young children. More than 400,000 of all deaths in the U.S. every year can be attributed and linked to lead exposure. Yet today, the Water Bureau's PR team is busier than ever convincing the public that undertreated water is safe to drink, while at the same time cryptosporidium, an intestinal malady, has been escalated to such a serious health threat that a $500 million filtration treatment plant is being sold to the public. Other water providers are protecting their citizens right now, and their lead levels are lower than ours. They fix pipes which poor treatment has corroded. They offer filters and bottled water for those most vulnerable to this potent neurotoxin. Meanwhile, you continue to delay and drag your feet while failing to protect drinking water at thousands of at-risk homes, schools, preschools, daycares, parks, and businesses. After Flint in 2016, EPA asked the Water Bureau, what more can you do to minimize lead at users' taps as quickly as possible? It's a simple question. What more can you do now to minimize lead at users' taps? Very simple. Well, it's still being ignored.
Thank you. Commissioner Fritz.
Ms. White, thank you very much for continuing to highlight this issue. I was disappointed you were not able to be here when we had a full presentation on both the problem. Oh, good. The problem and what we're doing to fix it. And indeed, we do need urgent changes. The pH of the water needs to be reduced to 8.5 rather, where it's currently it's 8.2. And so we're having a public meeting on November 8th from 6 to 7:30 at IRCO, the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization on Northeast Gleason. And 106, I think, to talk about both the treatment for lead and the treatment for the cryptosporidium that you mentioned. So if you're interested in this topic, if you want to get a free lead testing kit, various other information, including how to get financial assistance on paying your water bill, please come to that meeting on November 8th from 6 to 7:30. Look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you. Next individual, please.
Item 1118, request of Randy Gregg to address council regarding downtown food carts.
Carlin, I'm sorry, it looks like the subsequent two individuals would like to come up as well at the same time. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Sure.
1119, request of Brett Burmeister to address council regarding threats to Portland's lively and internationally renowned food cart scene. And 1120, request of Daniel Herta to address council regarding food carts.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning. Good morning. My name is Brett Burmeister, Portland native, and I've been tracking and writing about the Portland street food scene, the food cart scene, for 10 years. Been recognized both nationally and internationally as essentially a food cart expert and an ambassador. Portland's food cart scene is the envy of the world. In downtown Portland alone, there are 130 food carts available any given day throughout the year to feed both Portlanders and tourists alike. In juxtaposition, there's one McDonald's and 0 Burger Kings. 130 small businesses, family businesses, and taxpayers. Throughout the city and suburbs, there are almost 1,000 food carts operating in the Tri-County area, according to Multnomah County records. The largest food cart pod at 10th and Alder, with 55 vendors, may close within the year. 55 small businesses that will either close or be required to move. Travel Portland notes that food is the #1 reason tourists visit Portland. And food carts are a large part of that, according to yearly surveys. Every year, I personally provide food cart tours in downtown 3 to 5 times a week for tourists. Additionally, I partner with Travel Portland to show both national and international media the food carts for both print and other forms of media, including TV shows and blogs. This summer alone, I did food cart tours for Mexican, Japanese, British, French, and Australian journalists. The world knows about Portland's food cart scene, and they know it well. Food brings people together. The reason we have farmers markets, community gardens, food carts. We create community space. During the summer months, around 10 to 12,000 people walk the sidewalks around the food cart lots. By comparison, around 5,000 is the average for many other blocks in the city. Every day, food carts in downtown bring people together and create community space. Portland's food carts are as integral to the culture and fabric of the city as is Saturday Market, Washington Park, the Forest Park, the Rose Festival, and Pioneer Courthouse Square. We need to do something to change how we're going to manage food carts moving forward, as it's an important piece of why Portland is Portland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Daniel Huerta. I am the co-owner of Churros Locos. Back in early 2013, due to budget cuts, I ended up losing my job. After I lost my job, I was at a crossroads with what was next in my career. So my now wife and I, at that point, decided to start a food cart. April of that year, we were open for business. We ended up securing a spot in front of what now is Providence Park during a Timbers home game. Fast forward 2015, organizers of the World Street Food Congress, along with Brett Burmeister, invited us to bring our churro making expertise to Southeast Asia, Singapore. There, we were among 25 vendors from 12 different countries. We proudly represented Portland as a world-renowned food cart city. We did so well and everything went so good for us in 2015 that the organizers invited us for their 2016 edition, this time in the Philippines. While in Manila, we again represented Portland and the US as we were one of 2 mobile food cart vendors from the United States. After coming back from the Philippines, we were featured on CNN News, Huffington Post, Univision. We were top 10 dessert trucks in America. We were ranked number 4 in the United States. Oregon Bread Magazine featured us as a top dessert caterer here locally in Portland. You know, my wife and I, we travel around the world, and almost everywhere we go, when we tell people we're from Portland, people respond, wow, Portland really has a great food scene. A major part of that scene are the great food carts that we have here in Portland. We can think of Ibla Mediterranean Grill. The owner, Saeed, is a hardworking immigrant from Syria. He started with 1 small food cart, and now he has a restaurant, and he has 6 mobile carts around the city. Jaime, owner of Tamale Boy, is another Mexican-American Portlander. He actually started selling tamales out of the trunk of his cart. Now he has 2 restaurants, 2 mobile carts, a location at the PDX airport, and a booth at the Moda Center during the basketball games. Nong, from Nong's Come On Guy, is also an immigrant from Thailand. Their cart is an original cart at the 10th and Alder lot. She serves some of the best chicken rice outside of Southeast Asia. She now has 2 restaurants. We are just some examples of mobile vendors that have emerged from food carts to showcasing what Portland's scene really has to offer. As children of immigrants, our parents instilled in us hard work and dedication. And I stand here in front of you fully dedicated to advocate and preserve food carts and also the street food alive here in Portland, because it's truly part of Portland's identity. The Block 216 project will displace 55 of downtown's 130 food carts. Downtown food carts will become endangered species if we don't have a plan of action. And I think now is the time to act sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Back when I was editor of Portland Monthly, we devoted a whole issue to food carts in Portland in 2010. As you know, the movement was really born of the recession. It was the only downtown retail sector that actually grew during the recession, and rather dramatically, filling various surface parking lots. But food carts also became really an important urban regenerator, essentially creating the ground floors of future buildings around the parking lots, but also turning places like O'Brien Square, AKA Paranoid Park and Needle Park, into a nice place to have lunch. It was absolutely transformative. I was working next door during that time. But the parking lots where the food carts have thrived are now poised for development. That's natural. 216 will displace more than a third of downtown's food carts, possibly as soon as September. And some are already closing due to uncertainty. Inevitably, downtown food carts will become an endangered species. This is the Goodman's blocks and their future plans. Now, the Alder Street food cart pod is particularly important because of its proximity to the West End, which is really the cluster of the best local downtown retailing, with Powell's and the Ace Hotel and Polar and great businesses like that. And so to lose that is going to lose an essential ingredient of this district. But we can change the story with a kind of bold, simple, thrifty move that Portland is renowned for. We can not only save the food carts, but I think we can actually grow them. So we wanted to introduce you to an idea, the culinary corridor. And it's a pretty simple idea. It's basically, as the planners call it, tactical urbanism at its best. Basically, what we propose is creating a corridor of food carts along the Midtown Park blocks between Director Park and O'Brien Square by simply repurposing a few parking spots. The area is currently a retail dead zone and has been for quite a long time, actually. In the last 20 years, I know when I was at the Oregonian, I wrote about 4 different plans for the Midtown Park blocks, none of which produced the kind of festival streets that were imagined. And doing this doesn't have to be made difficult. We are proposing a fast-track task force and a feasibility study of 9th Avenue from O'Brien Square to the South Park blocks, with a pilot program for a single block. And that could happen anywhere along there. It could also happen at O'Brien Square if some portion of O'Brien Square can be reopened. I know there's a group sort of working on that idea. The culinary corridor could connect the West End shopping district via the Midtown blocks to Travel Portland, which is taking root in Director Park with a new meet and greet center. And this is how retail works best in downtown. It connects destinations through lively urban trails, the Pearl to Powell's to Travel Portland to the Cultural District. I'm going to take a couple more minutes if you don't mind. Pioneer Courthouse Square, we installed some new food carts. It's been a tremendous success and has added to our bottom line about $100,000 a year. The culinary corridor would need a similarly careful approach as we took there, but it also needs to be real, authentic, and grassroots. So we imagine intermingling brand names, but also work with Mercy Corps Northwest and Prosper Portland to possibly create a microfinance program. That's how the early food carts got started, courtesy of Mercy Corps Northwest. If it works, the culinary corridor can expand. If it doesn't, it can go away. Research is needed. The private sector, I have talked to a number of people who are willing to step up if the city will step up too, particularly if O'Brien Square is included into this. The time is to act now, otherwise the national and international headlines are going to be high-rising downtown Portland loses its street food soul. Jeff Miller and Travel Portland is solidly behind this. I have a letter from them, and we hope that this can take root. We think it's a great idea and could really preserve this wonderful culture for downtown Portland.
Thank you. It's an exciting concept.
Thank you.
Very exciting concept. Obviously, Randy and colleagues, to be continued.
Yes,
but
yeah,
I appreciate you bringing this concept
Chloe
forward.
couldn't be here, Commissioner Daly. Obviously, she has transportation, and that's a big player in this. But
sure,
I know there's a lot of studies going on, so we thought it would be good to try to project this to you all, so as the other folks are working on this, it can start to be part of the conversation.
Good, and I'd love to get a copy of your presentation.
Yes.
If you just want to shoot me an email later or whatever. Good,
Okay.
cool,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
I'll send one to you.
Very good, thank you. Next individual, please, Carla.
1121, request
Sorry.
of injured and pissed off to address council regarding wanted honest attorney, liars and liberty, and justice for all.
If they can get the business community on board with that, if they can get the business community interested. You know, I think it is. That's all right. Good morning, sir.
My name's Injured and Pissed Off, and I'd given the paper that I filled out August 31st to each of you should have this, and of course that was 2 months ago, but what I actually had wrote was wanted honest attorney, that seems pretty simple enough, plus Ed Tabor. And then I have on the second line, there's a minus sign at the end of Ed Tabor. And on the second line, it says liars plus liberty and justice for all. That's actually what I signed and had dated by the city auditor's office. And Ed Tabor, anybody can look that up on the internet. He's a former police officer of Pendleton, Oregon, 30 years, twice served as police chief. And I, of course, Mayor Wheeler, I was speaking October 18th was the last date that I spoke at the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners from September 13th to October 18th. And I was explaining that this article, Uninvited Guest, that Willamette Week had wrote after 4 dog attacks, and of course your letter after 5, then another 2 dog attacks after that, 7.
NOTSEEPDS, born and raised person of color. I worked in.
Can we take a recess, please?
97.
One moment.
Ed Tabor, I wouldn't let him, with his police department, telling me that there was no animal control after my service animal had been attacked. And now he's a polygraph examiner. And of course, I had to prove, the police chief said that it was against the law for I and another blind man to take our animals into stores, and he fought, even kind of stupidly, with the United States Department of Justice, and that ought to interest any attorney that wants to handle my case, because liberty and justice for all isn't apparently for a blind person in Portland, Oregon, because after 7 dog attacks, you've got nerve enough to think there that you were helping me. Well, I don't need that kind of help from anybody. And I'm lucky to be alive because 500,000 people that have had hip surgery since November 16th of 2010, 500,000 people are dead now from hip surgery since then. More than 500,000. And of course, I have spinal cord injuries, and almost 80,000 people since then have been crippled, paralyzed.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing today. All right, time certain, 11:22, please.
We'll do the
Oh, I'm
consent.
sorry, the consent. I have pulled one item, 11:24, that we'll take up at the head of the regular agenda. Have other items been pulled, Carla?
Yes, 1126.
11:26, thank you very much. Please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda.
Fritz,
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the consent agenda is adopted. First time certain item, 1122, please.
Proclaim October 31st to be Age-Friendly Business Day.
Commissioner Fish.
Oh, okay, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me just get set here.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mayor.
yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So proud to introduce this proclamation as in my capacity as council liaison to Venture Portland, Elders in Action, and the Age-Friendly Advisory Council. All of those organizations teamed up to create the inaugural Age-Friendly Business Awards, which we both attended this morning. There we celebrated equity-focused, age-friendly businesses who provide inclusive services to people of all ages and abilities. We're pleased to have as our honored guests this morning the following panel: Barbara Bernstein from Elders in Action, Heather Hale from Venture Portland, Joyce DeMonin from the AARP, and Dr. Margaret Neal from Portland State University. After our panel, the mayor's going to read a proclamation, then we're going to get a photograph. Ladies, who's going to kick it off?
Okay.
Barbara?
Thank
Welcome.
you. My name's Barbara.
Morning.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for having us here today. My name's Barbara Bernstein. I'm the executive director of Elders in Action, and
Excuse me, just pull the mic
Okay.
up a little bit. There you go.
all right, thank you. Just have a few words here. 100 years ago, the average life expectancy was between 33 and 45 years of age. Only 10 to 12% of the population would make it to age 65, and only 4% to age 85. That's now the average age. Since 1950, we have added 30 years to the lifespan, and our longer lives are healthier and more active than ever before. This aging population represents new markets which businesses are innovating to meet. The aging population represents an unprecedented pool of talent that can be harnessed to make workplaces more effective and dynamic and improve our communities through volunteerism. The Age-Friendly Awards recognizes these changes and seeks to recognize those places of work and commerce that are meeting the challenges and opportunities of the aging population. All the applicants and awardees are creating great opportunities for older adults to realize their full potential and to contribute to the well-being of our communities. When older adults thrive, the whole community thrives. Elders in Action is honored to have been a partner for the last 12 years, along with PSU, the Institute on Aging, AARP, Multnomah County, City of Portland, and others, in the work that contributed to Portland being honored by the World Health Organization as one of the first age-friendly cities in America. We are thrilled to be partnering with Venture Portland to continue in the tradition of the age-friendly innovation to present the Portland Age-Friendly Business Awards.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Heather Hale. I'm the Executive Director of Venture Portland. As you all know, Venture Portland is the support system for the city's 50 unique neighborhood business districts. Together, they contain 19,200 businesses and provide 270,000 jobs. As you've heard me say before, we are a small business town, and in Portland, small is really big. We are thrilled to be here as part of the inaugural Age-Friendly Business Awards and recognizing the neighborhood businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies that are employing and serving people of all ages.
I'm Margaret Neal, the co-chair of the Portland and Multnomah County Age-Friendly Advisory Council. I'm the past director of the Institute on Aging, and I want to thank the City of Portland, all of you, Mayor and Commissioners, for your support of the age-friendly effort. This morning we had a wonderful celebration downstairs where we awarded Age Smart Employer Awards to businesses throughout the city who have promising business practices to support intergenerational, multi-generational workforces, doing things to help to hire older adults, retain older adults, and provide professional development to those workers. Then we also created the Age-Friendly Business Awards, which were for companies that served older adults in a variety of different ways. So thank you for your support. I thank all of our sponsors for this event, AARP Oregon, all the work that was done by Heather Hale and Shanna Pittman-Frank at Elders in Action. Portland State University, all of the members of our committee, the Age-Friendly Economic Development and Employment Committee, which I co-chair with Joyce DeMon. And so thanks, everyone. And I look forward to having another awards ceremony next year.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, commissioners. You know, at AARP, we're looking toward the 100-year life, and we know it's time to disrupt outdated modes of thinking. And by doing this today, you are demonstrating true leadership, because so many people think that when you're 65 or 66, you're done. And we know people are not done at that age, whether they want to continue working and contributing to the community, or they want to volunteer or be a mentor or start a business, because we know that people 55 and older start more businesses than any other age group. So we applaud you for your leadership in this area. And I do want to take one moment to give a shout out to the mayor, who 10 years ago convened a group as Multnomah County Chair, and I got to chair the workforce committee for that. And a report came out in 2008 called Everyone Matters. And I think in the day and age we live in today, the title Everyone Matters matters even more. And thank you, Mayor, for starting the conversation. The recession sort of disrupted some of our work, but we've been chugging along. And to see this many businesses apply to this beginning award is a testament to the work and leadership you've all given us, but also the great work of our committee, and that businesses are getting it, that if you want to have a strategic business strategy, you better have a strategy for 50 plus. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The mayor is now going to read a proclamation, then we're going to have a photograph in the well, and we'll invite our honorees, that because we have some of the businesses that we honored that are here. We'll have them come forward and we'll take a group picture. Mayor?
Thank you, Commissioner. Whereas in 2006, the World Health Organization launched the Global Age-Friendly Cities Project based on two trends: population aging and urbanization. And whereas in 2011, Portland had the honor of becoming the first U.S. city to be certified as age-friendly. And whereas each year, older adults generate more than $7 trillion in economic activity nationwide, a figure that's expected to double by 2032. And whereas Portland's small businesses are the backbone of our local economy. And whereas many of our local small businesses are certified age-smart employers that embrace age diversity and create workplaces that value equity, inclusiveness, and intergenerational respect. And whereas Portland values the leadership of the Age-Friendly Advisory Council of Portland and Multnomah County, its Economic Development and Work Committee, and our champions for local small businesses, including Venture Portland and Elders in Action. And whereas today we presented the inaugural Age-Friendly Business Awards to Portland businesses that provide quality employment opportunities and innovative services to our older adults. And whereas the City of Portland and Multnomah County share a vision of a city that welcomes and celebrates people of all ages and abilities. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, the Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim October 31st, 2018 to be Age-Friendly Business Day in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this day.
Thank you.
Should we get a photo? Let's get a photo right up down here in front.
Our committee members and the awardees.
Squeeze in a little bit more right here.
Hold that. Slide. Can I slide in right here?
Right, guys, we got more people, so you're gonna have to act like you like each other.
And we can fit.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that very much. It was a great thing that was done. I appreciate it.
Okay. Right here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Big group. Keep smiling. 1, 2, 3. Great. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks again. Yeah, likewise. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good job. Thank you.
Heather. Thanks for joining us. Congrats again.
All right, Carla, the next item, please, time certain 11:23.
Accept the quarterly Technology Oversight Committee report from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Colleagues, the Technology Oversight Committee provides citizen oversight on significant city technology projects, especially those with high risk or high cost. This gives us early and continued technology oversight by an independent 5-member committee for the purpose of increased transparency and accountability. TOC sends quarterly reports to the Chief Administrative Officer, who then forwards the reports to City Council. The quarterly reports include information from each project's independent quality assurance consultant and TOC's assessment of the project status. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Heather Hafer, new Senior Management Analyst for the Office of Management and Finance, and also staff support for the Technology Oversight Committee. With me today are some familiar faces: Jeff Baer, Director of the Bureau of Technology Services, and 2 TOC members, Diana Garcia, appointed by Commissioner Fritz, and Victoria Trapp, recently appointed by Commissioner Saltzman. As you know, TOC is made up of 5 community members, each named by a City Council member. The other TOC members who are not with us here today are Ken Neubauer for Commissioner Fish, Jimmy Goddard for Commissioner Hugh Daly, and Wilf Pinfold for Mayor Wheeler. The TOC advises the Chief Administrative Officer, Tom Reinhardt. We are here today to present information from the TOC's quarterly report to Mr. Reinhardt for July through September 2018. This past quarter, TOC followed 2 different projects: Portland's Online Permitting System, or POPS, and the City Budget Office's software replacement project, Budget Formulation Management, or BFM. TOC also just started monitoring the Portland, Oregon website replacement project, as well as the integrated tax system project, and you'll be hearing more about those in our next update. We will be projecting the project's dashboards. These dashboards contain information from the project management staff, quality assurance contractors, and of course the TOC. Jeff, Diana, and Victoria will now provide the most current project updates and will answer any questions that you may have.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and members of City Council. I'm Jeff Baer, the Director of Bureau of Technology Services, and I'm here to provide a few updates since the end of September and answer any questions you may have or concerns you may be hearing about related to these 2 projects. The first one we'll talk about is the Portland Online Permitting System, POPS as it's known by. And although you see in the report the triple constraints, scope, schedule, and budget, there are numerous other activities behind each one of those different constraints. In fact, we are tracking 6 different work streams within each of these, with this project. They include the inspector app, the inspection scheduling, the Amanda 7 migration, the public permit portal, the contractor app, and the electronic plan review, which we went live in under a pilot program this past July. This past week, we received and achieved a major milestone in receiving a new release from the vendor, CSDC, that included a number of updates and fixes that we had identified as potential issues. And right now, our team has been conducting quality acceptance testing, and it's going very well. And we've actually gone through each of the different fixes that we identified, and there is no significant issues that we are facing at this point. Bureau of Development Services also held 2 open house events last week to highlight all of these different parts of the POPS program, really trying to socialize what is coming. We've got a phased-in deployment of these different applications that I mentioned earlier, and we had an extremely good turnout for those 2 events. And we're also scheduling an in-depth review with the members of the Technology Oversight Committee to really get them a deep dive into all the different aspects of the project. And overall, I would say that the project is going well. It's not without challenges. We have a huge lift in front of us with some training and some change management, but I would say that the project is going pretty well. And I'll turn it over to Diana and to Victoria.
I think just a call out we wanted to make from the TOC is we know this project has had challenges in the past. We have been very pleased with how both the city and the vendor have responded to those coming up. While things are not perfect, we would not expect them to be. This is probably one of the most complicated projects you have in-house right now. So we expect some ups and downs. We are again, very pleased and very happy with the way both the city and the vendor have approached those and tried to make sure they are communicating and working together in that space. So while the status is yellow, we do see it as an upward trajectory as things getting better, as long as they continue to operate in the way that they are planning and the way things are going. As well, we're very pleased to hear that the release from last week went the way expected and that things just kind of prove out that we believe things are going to move forward in a positive way for the city, as long as we continue to partner and hold firm on what we believe to be right for the city.
Hi, good morning. The update for the Budget Formulation Management Project, as Heather mentioned, also known as BFM, a little familiarity with this is that this is the replacement for the existing BRASS system that the city uses for budgeting software. It is a cloud-based program, and it will encompass combining many sources of data into one singular source of data. It will also integrate with the planning systems, SAP, and the city's budget office publishing software as well. What the group has done to date, why it's in green, is they've made significant progress, on the report development, and the file structure for those is all established. They're also uploading the administrative parts, and that has been finalized. And the end user training has also been scheduled and invites out for that. So they're progressing right along with the end user impact there. Next milestones that we'll have, we'll continue to progress on the reporting development. As you can imagine, there are many reports that have to be converted over, and we're also going to be scheduling U-Perform training, which is an online-based sort of training program as well. From the committee perspective, we're very pleased with where this is. We moved it into the green status because of the progress on the reports and development there. We don't have any concerns at this time that the project team and the support that they have also from the vendor will not continue forth in a green status.
And I would just add to those comments about BFM, which stands for Budget Formulation and Management. The Budget Office has done a really excellent job in terms of managing the implementation of this project. And this, since the prior report period, they've worked alongside with our team on the Enterprise Business Solutions to finish up those interfaces with the SAP application. And the project team is now working to complete a number of reports, simulations, and budget manual with rolling out early November, followed by training. So I would say that the project is going very well.
Yep. If anyone has any questions, we would be happy to entertain those.
Commissioner Saltzman.
I guess I'm curious how the electronic plan review pilot has been going since July, did you say?
Since July, yes. Yeah. We've got good feedback. We've got 2 large projects, just commercial projects that have gone through. We've put it in as a pilot just to learn and see how it's working well. And so far, we've gotten great reviews from the reviewers that have done through the plans examination. So it's shortened their timeline significantly. So we're slowly going to open that up to roll it out to further commercial developments and to residential eventually.
Okay.
I think that's also a good example of the way that POPS is approaching the work and finding those ways they can get things out quickly to the city to help improve not just the lives of your city employees, but also to those who have to use the systems. It's a good example of a way to gradually roll that out and find that benefit and then continue that for the city.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Fish, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Very good. Please call the roll, Carla.
Fritz.
Well, thank you very, very much for your service. I am so glad that there are people who know so much more about this than I do, who are looking over it and giving us your expert advice. We really, really value your assistance and guidance, and thanks to staff also for being willing to support you and give you information in an open and transparent manner. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, thank you, Diana and Victoria, for your service, and for the other members as well, and it's a good report, so thanks a lot. Aye.
Wheeler.
I appreciate your service. Thank you. I vote aye. The report's adopted. Thanks again. We'll see you in a quarter. Next item, 1124, please.
Accept donation of goods and services from the Pearl District Neighborhood Association for the improvement of downtown public solid waste and recycling collection.
Colleagues, today I'm excited. This ordinance highlights one of the ways the city and the community at large have joined together to help make Portland the cleanest city in America. This emergency ordinance is an exciting new partnership between the Pearl District Neighborhood Association and the city to improve our public garbage can program. This ordinance will allow the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to accept the donation of a new style of garbage cans to replace existing older style cans and also increase the overall number of public cans in the Pearl District. The initial plan is for the PDNA to donate 95 cans to the city over the next few months, with the first 23 expected to be installed around the North Park blocks in mid-November. The city's acceptance of PDNA's donations will also allow the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to focus funding on their citywide public garbage can expansion project. I'd like to turn this over to Kevin Vaudry-Casas from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability for an overview of council action. Thank you. And Kevin, did I pronounce your name properly? If not, would you please correct it?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm Kevin Vaudry-Casas.
I wasn't even close. I got Kevin right.
Closer than most.
I got Kevin right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability in partnership with the Pearl District Neighborhood Association. This has been a very generous collaboration that the Pearl District Neighborhood Association is providing to us. We will initially be getting the first of these new garbage cans in a few weeks along the North Park blocks. We expect some new ones to be installed with many, many more to come shortly thereafter. We know that having an adequate number of clean, well-functioning garbage cans increases the livability of an area, and we know that having these cans in place will enhance the experience of people who live in, work in, or are just visiting the Pearl District. This is going to be a very large expanding project, and through the donation that we received from the Pearl District Neighborhood Association, we'll be able to expand citywide that much more quickly and efficiently. So we're very happy about this.
Very good. Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Public testimony, Carla, on this item?
Yes, we have two people signed up,
Very good.
Maggie and Joe Welch.
Thank you. Kevin, if you want to take a seat, you're welcome to. Thank you.
Carla, I think we have one more.
Good morning.
We'll call him in a bit.
Oh, I'll go.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. I wasn't going to speak on this item, except the mayor made an interesting comment. You want to be the cleanest city in the United States. And immediately what went through my head is, why? Why would you want to be the cleanest city? The friendliest city? The most transparent city? The honest city? The most receptive city? Why the cleanest? What is it about you, Mayor, that you have to be clean?
Mr. Walsh, you can be number one. You can be number one in many areas. This is not to the exclusion of everything else.
I'm interested in arguing with you. Let me have my 3 minutes, and then you can say what you want. You can take a shower. You can get clean. Whatever. You're spending a lot of money on this stuff, and then you become dependent. Why doesn't the city just do its job? If you need trash cans, get the damn things out there. Don't depend on me or somebody else. Don't depend on the business community, because then you are dependent on them. And they can pull it anytime they want. So, Mr. Mayor, why don't you do your job? People always ask me, why don't they fill the potholes and collect the garbage? Those are two main jobs of a city government, and you're giving it to somebody else. But you're going to take a shower and get clean there, Mayor, because you have to be clean. You have to be the cleanest city in America. You have a police department that is totally out of control. You have people that are outraged. You can't even hold a meeting without somebody causing an uproar, and it's not me. I'm the best behaved one lately, and that's saying something. So we're against this. This is stupid.
Good morning.
Okay, so first, I would like you to reinstate Charles, because yes, he did sit on the testimony bench, but he's an unarmed guy. He's just passionate. The second thing I would like to say is that, you know, businesses do not recycle enough. I go into businesses and they never have recycling inside their businesses. So businesses need to do more, actually, to contribute, because they're the ones selling all these goods with all these plastic bottles and cans. And, you know, we need more plastic bottle recycling bins, and we need more can recycling bins all over the place, not just in the Pearl District. And businesses should contribute to that, because consumer goods that they sell do have an impact on the landfill. So that's my opinion about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity XX1 PDX. The only concern I have on this, and I don't have any issue with the term clean city. Obviously, we need to have more trash pickup devices. I don't necessarily call them cans if you're looking at that type of solar type setup they're using. But I guess where I have a problem on this is that one of the things, my understanding is that PDNA, the Pearl District Neighborhood Association, is independent of the city. Now, my only question to the city is that since they are part of the 95 neighborhood associations, do you in any way fund them in any manner? Do you in any way give them any grant money? Because in my position, what I would find interesting is that if the city gives them money, then they buy cans and donate it back to the city for a tax write-off. Is that really independent? And we're going to be going over this on some other foundations. Is that really independence of the city? And so I don't have any issue here. And I think Mr. Walsh brought up a great point here, is that, in my opinion, the city should have just paid for it out of their general fund or their own funding. And again, he brought up a very valid point there, is that this is a donation from PDNA, who is a neighborhood association, who is a 501c3, my understanding, and is funded by the city itself. So I don't know. I don't, when I'm looking at different nonprofits, I kind of like to see that separation, no employees involved, money transferred over, not given back for a donation. I like just a clean slate and no conflict of interest in any way that it appears to be. So again, just from my position, I don't like this kind of juggling back and forth from neighborhood associations back to the city, city paying the neighborhood association, going back and forth. So again, if my good friends at the IRS are listening, please audit the city. Please audit Pearl District NA Association. Please audit this and get back to me. Again, my name's Lightning. Feel free to get back to me and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Very good. And we also have invited testimony. Mr. Stanley Penkin is here. Come on up,
And also
sir.
Mary Sight has requested.
Oh,
to
and
speak.
Mary Sight. Very good. Sorry, I apologize. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for talking trash with us this morning. We appreciate it. I've got a couple of hard acts to follow here. I will say first to the last gentleman that we welcome an audit, and we will refer his comments to our CFO. So we'll see what our CFO has to say. But thank you for this morning and working with us on the trash. This is probably the largest and most ambitious project that we've ever taken on as an association. I want to acknowledge a few people first. John Hollister, who you all know, who was instrumental in getting this initiative going. And unfortunately, he would love to be here and hand out some books to you, but he's not. He's out of town. I also want to thank Kevin at BPS and Jeremy Bersudo. They were just so totally diligent, sincere, and cooperative in working with us on this project, which is somewhat complicated, as I think you know. I also want to thank people in your office, Mayor Sarafi and Michelle, for their help and cooperation. I want to say, as I walk around the Pearl District and other neighborhoods in the city, I hear a lot of grumbling about livability issues, crime, trash, litter, the homeless, and so on. And we're a growing city. We have a lot of things going on. We have a lot of issues. The reality is that government alone can't do everything that we want it to do. People say, well, why doesn't the city do this? Why doesn't the city do that? Well, folks, the reality is the city can't. We don't have those resources. And not only Portland, it's I think, a universal problem, cities across the country. So this program to us is an example of how communities and government do work together. And I think when we look at this, not just as the vacuum of the Pearl, we look at this as an example of how cities and communities can work together, and an example for other neighborhoods across the city. So this is just the beginning. And I do want to say that you mentioned the 95 cans, Mayor. Beyond that, our intent is to add upwards of another 100 cans in areas where we don't have cans. We lack trash cans throughout the Pearl, especially in the North Pearl, the newer areas. So our ambitions go beyond the 95. And I'm happy to say that we are well on the way to raising the money for the 95. As you know, as mentioned, the first 23 or 25 actually are coming in very soon. So thank you. This is just the beginning of communities and city government working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. We appreciate your leadership on this very much. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Mary Sipe, and for the first time I'm speaking to you as a newly elected member of the Pearl District Neighborhood Association Board. I just want to thank the city for partnering with the Pearl District on this project. I'd also like to kind of point out a couple of things that I think a couple of the people that testified maybe don't understand. The Pearl District is rather a unique neighborhood. In most neighborhoods, you don't have thousands of people coming into your neighborhood on a daily basis. You don't have events that attract sometimes 10,000 people to your neighborhood park. And we're a destination, and we're visited by people from all over the world. And one of the problems that this creates is trash. The volume of trash that is generated in our neighborhood is I think, much greater than what you would see in any normal residential area. And so as a neighborhood association and as neighbors and community members, instead of just grumbling about it, we came together and figured out a way that we could partner with the city and address the problem. And just like Stan said, instead of walking around going, why doesn't the city do this? What is the city doing about this? We've decided to be a part of the solution, and I want to thank the city for partnering with us, and may this program grow.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a
Appreciate it.
question.
Commissioner Fish.
Stan, thank you for taking time to come in and update us on this program. You've been doing private fundraising, I understand.
Correct.
And the brochure that you gave us lists different sponsorship levels. How much do you anticipate you're going to have to raise to fully fund the 95?
The 95? Yeah. Well, the ultimate goal is 350,000.
Right.
That would be for approximately 170, somewhere between 170 and 200 cans total. So the initial phase is basically some new cans in the North Park blocks. That's our first phase, which will set the example of what these cans will look like and how they will work. Beyond that, we are going, the additional 70 is to replace the existing city cans that are now in the Pearl District.
And can you remind me who will be picking up the trash? So if one of these cans is on Parks land, I assume that the Parks Bureau would be responsible for cleaning it. If it's on in another right-of-way, would it be Clean and Safe or some other
No,
vendor?
so BPS is responsible for trash collection on the streets. Parks is separate from BPS.
Right.
And actually, you just opened the door for me to lobby you again for putting some of these cans in the North Park blocks. Now, we have met with staff at Parks and Rec. There are 5 trash cans in the park that are of a different type. Actually, they're the ugly concrete rounds that get picked by homeless folks seeking the recycling. And we wanted to put 5 of those cans there as well. But right now, Parks is kind of more comfortable with the cans they have right now. So that,
okay, we'll take a good look at that.
The other thing I want to say, we appreciate that the city has indicated that the trash collection times will be increased. It is currently 2 times a week. We understand it will be increased to at least, I guess, 4 times a week. We're hoping for even more, but we're happy with the 4. The other thing, the other part of this program that wasn't mentioned is we are creating a volunteer group, sort of an Adopt a Block program, whereby we will have residents within the Pearl picking up any additional trash that just accumulates in the streets. We expect there to be far less trash because these new cans are so-called bear-proof, tamper-proof cans, so you can't rifle into them and pull out the recyclables. The other part of this that should be mentioned is that these cans have a recycling component that goes to the side of it that will accept cans and bottles which are easily accessible. So someone doesn't have to rummage through to get those cans and bottles to collect the 10 cents.
Thank you.
So I was just wondering, your brochure speaks to sponsorship opportunities, things
Yes.
like that. So are there opportunities for logos or advertising on the cans?
Well, we had wanted to be able to put the names of sponsors on the cans, but the city, in speaking to BPS, that is something the city does not want. So The only thing that will be on there will be, it will say Pearl District, and we'll have the city seal. And actually, I do have a graphic of what the first round of cans will look like, which I can pass over to you with a tree logo on it. They're pretty attractive.
Yeah, Mayor, I would urge us to review our policy about not allowing advertising on the newspaper stands and also the trash cans, because it's such a non-issue in most cities I go to, and it's done very tastefully, and it generates revenue to do this. And I know you have ambitious plans to clean up the trash in the city. We should be able to unleash resources of the private sector to do that as well. And I think logos, advertising done tastefully is part and parcel making this successful.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner. It does put a little hamper in our fundraising efforts, because people, especially businesses, of course, especially, would like to see their names on the cans, and that's been a little bit of a deterrent towards our fundraising. So if the city would choose to change its policy on that, we would greatly appreciate it.
I think it's due for review. I think our policy is antiquated, frankly, and it's inhibiting our ability to be successful.
But we need you to act on that quickly. Now, the first group of cans will not have that opportunity, but we're getting close to ordering the next 70 cans. So if you can get that done quickly, we would greatly appreciate it.
There's always bumper stickers.
What's that?
There's always bumper stickers that you could add them later.
Well, I guess. And so while I have this podium, I just want to take a moment to talk about something that we are, the Pearl District neighborhood is sponsoring on December 3rd. We are holding a livability summit, which, Mayor, thank you very much for participating in that. We're going to have a community-wide conversation about livability issues, ranging from trash to graffiti to crime to the homeless situation. There'll be an opportunity for the community to come out and learn more about what the city is doing, how we can work together. The theme is communities and government working together. It will be at the main stage at Portland, at the Armory, Portland Center stage. Seats about 600 people. We expect to have 1,200 people, especially with the mayor being there. And we're promising you it's not going to be a bitch session. Well, try promise as best we can.
You're promising me.
As best we can, anyway. So we
you
invite
made
everybody.
The promise publicly, you all heard it.
we invite everybody to come to that, including all the commissioners, and there will be other leaders from the city there for a very, we hope, robust conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
And people do express their frustration about these issues, and honestly, I think it's okay if people want to express their frustration. The key here is how do we take that frustration and turn it into positive outcomes? And this is a great example of a group of people coming together and saying, there's a problem, we want to work with the city to help address the problem, and you're making a very positive contribution in doing it. So if we can encourage other people to take their anger, their frustration, and turn it into positive initiatives like this all across the city, I think that would be a fantastic thing for the community.
And to that point, Mayor, and I think I said that to you when we spoke, I had been invited to a building in the Pearl District to talk about what the Neighborhood Association does. And I walked into a buzzsaw. People were upset about a whole bunch of things. And they had an opportunity to vent. And then we had an opportunity to talk. And afterwards, a number of people came up to me and said, okay, I understand. How can we help? We want to get engaged. So I think people do have to vent and then look to find solutions.
And that's what I'm here for.
Okay.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions? Very good. Please call the roll, Carla.
Fritz?
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much for this project. Mayor, thank you for pulling this off consent so that we could hear about it. If anybody wants to donate, they can email president@pearldistrict.org. I like this brochure because it's got this nice picture of what one of the cans will look like. And the logo right now says, keep it pretty, Rose City. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being pretty. And particularly, I like that the recycling is on the outside, so it's not that people can't get them, they can get them in a more respectful manner, and it's really clear that there is an available bottle or can to be taken back. Commissioner Saltzman, the trash can going into the park in the city where I grew up is sponsored by 2 city council members, which I think that's an intriguing possibility. I'm happy to vote aye.
Fish.
Well, I want to thank Stan Pankin and John Hollister and the Pearl District Neighborhood Association and their newest member for driving this. This is public-private partnerships at its best. And when people say, you know, why does government partner with the private sector, I would point you just to the Parks Bureau. We have over 100 partnerships that help us deliver world-class services. And without those partnerships, we wouldn't have the same level of service. So we are dependent on building these smart kinds of partnerships with the community. And the other thing I want to just note is that the increase in trash in our city is a byproduct of a very happy development, which is, unlike the trend across the country, our downtown is an attractive destination for people. And if you doubt that, come downtown with me on a Saturday night, and you'll just see an enormous number of people taking advantage of what we have to offer. And as a result, they leave a bigger footprint. And we're seeing more trash. Cities, as they grow and as they become more successful, leave more trash. It's the nature of things. So we're playing catch up. We're doing it with a trusted partner who deserves our thanks today. And Stan, I will take this up with the Parks Bureau and get back to you on the question that you raised. But thank you. This is a happy day for our city. Aye.
Saltzman?
Yes, I'd like to thank the Pearl District Neighborhood Association and its outstanding members, John Hollister, Stan Penkin, Mary Sipe, among others, for this great partnership. We really appreciate your leadership on this. Aye.
Wheeler.
I'm enthusiastically supportive of this. You know, this is one component to livability in our city. It's one for which there's no excuse for us to be excellent at providing a service. We should absolutely be able to keep the litter off of our streets and out of our parks and off the sidewalks. It's critical to, I think, the look and the feel and the vitality of this community. And high volume, high tourist destinations like the Pearl District are disproportionately impacted by livability issues like this. And I think it's fantastic that the neighborhood has stepped forward in a significant way with a donation. They come in the spirit of partnership, and perhaps lost in the fray here was something that was said at the beginning of the presentation, which is because the Pearl District is doing this, this allows us to take resources and push them farther out across the rest of the community. I think we all acknowledge that the Pearl District may have some resources and some capacity that other neighborhoods across the city may not have. And because of their generosity and because of their dedication, they're actually helping improve the livability in other neighborhoods across the city as well. And I want to acknowledge that. So thank you. This is great. Another important step in our effort to become the cleanest city in America, as well as all the other things that we do so well in this city and so many other lists that we top. This is not to the exclusion of all else. This is just one more thing that we're going to do that's going to make us all proud of the fact that we're Portlanders. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Commissioner Fish has requested, since he has staff here presently, to go to 1126. Let's take care of that.
1126, authorize the Director of Portland Parks and Recreation to execute the Sixth Amendment to the Thomas Cully Park Development Agreement to allow the transfer of Department of Environmental Quality and Multnomah County funds to Verde.
Claudia, I'm not sure what I think about executing the Sixth Amendment, but we can discuss that later. By the way, I think this is Claudio's first appearance before council in his newest role at Portland Parks and Rec, and we are very excited that he's taken on this leadership position. Welcome. And I believe this was pulled by Lightning, if I'm correct. And so if you could make a brief presentation, then we'll hear from Lightning.
Sure. As you said, my name is Claudio Campuzano. Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor. So this is the Sixth Amendment of an agreement originally entered into in 2012 for the construction of Thomas Cully Park. Thomas Cully Park is a 25-acre park that was completed through, as we were just discussing, public-private partnerships. This is another shining example, a public-private partnership with our community partner, Verde. The park was converted from a brownfield and is recently opened. And this amendment includes work that allows for final permit approval and some final safety improvements, including some monitoring issues. So the amendment is funded through some intergovernmental partners, including about $526,000 from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and $70,000 from Multnomah County. And this really, those agreements have already been included in earlier council actions, and this really just is the Sixth Amendment to update the agreement to disperse those funds.
Thank you very much. That concludes our presentation, Mayor.
Very good. Public testimony, I believe Lightning.
There wasn't a sign-up sheet for this one.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity XX1 PDX. My reason for pulling this is, again, would be on the gas monitoring probes that are currently out at the park. And one of the concerns I have on this is with DEQ stepping in on this is that it's my understanding a lot of these gas monitoring probes have been neglected, damaged over time. And from my position, when you're talking the release of methane and understanding the health effects it can have on people, that if we don't have this monitoring system set up and working properly, then in my opinion, it's a public safety issue. And my problem is that all the data that I've received on this states that there are some serious problems currently out there. Now, my understanding, you're working right now currently with people out there working, doing things at this location. But just how bad is this methane gas being released at this old landfill? And I'm just talking strictly from a public safety issue to make sure the public is aware of this and why this monitoring system has been so neglected, hasn't been kept up, things broken, things pushed over, things covered in water, different things that you couldn't possibly get an accurate reading from. Now again, from my position, I want to have everything on this monitoring system brand new. Everything up to date. Not things that have been used in the past and neglected, and you want to sit there and continue to use it. So my question to you, as the city, as people protecting the health of the people in the city, do you think this information you've received on this monitoring system is accurate? Do you think the system you have in place would give you accurate readings? Or do you care? Or do you care? Do you care about the public safety? Now again, as the self-appointed ambassador called the nuisance inspector of City Hall, I'm going to fine you, and I'm going to ask DEQ to come alongside of me and fine you for $250,000 as of today. And I'm going to ask DEQ to make sure that this system is operating, that this system is functional, and that the people working around this system at this time should feel like they are safe. We are talking methane being released from a landfill with equipment that is not functional. I'm not happy today, City Hall. You get a $250,000 nuisance lien slapped on every one of you. Enjoy it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi. So it seems like there's a lot of stuff at the city and county level where people just go, you know what, everything looks fine, everything sounds great, and, you know, contractors don't have to fulfill their services. And that's not a good thing. Public safety, whether
Ma'am,
it's...
do you have evidence that Verde in this case has not performed? You won't go credit against your time, because this is an amendment to a contract. Do you have any evidence that Verde, which is a community-based organization, has not fulfilled any of its contractual requirements?
Well, I think
have any
Lightning
evidence?
is concerned about it, and it seems to be a process where you guys just have a lack of monitoring of your contractors. And yes, I've seen you like not monitor other contractors in the past. And so let's have a monitoring of proper monitoring of contractors where you're not just like looking the other way so they can get their money. Let's really do what you say you're going to do. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Commissioner Fish, I appreciate you bringing these amendments which address the concerns. And if you haven't been to this park in the Cully neighborhood, you should go because it's absolutely wonderful. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 1128.
Authorize compliance and enforcement measures for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability administrative rules for energy-efficient building requirements for planned development bonuses.
Colleagues, today we're going to consider an ordinance authorizing compliance and enforcement measures for BPS administrative rules for energy-efficient building requirements for planned development bonuses. Barry Manning and Vin Mason are here to provide an overview and answer any questions. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
Barry Manning with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, joined by Vin Mason with our Green Buildings team. Thank you all. Again, as the mayor said, we're here today to request the council adoption of an ordinance that we're proposing that approves compliance and enforcement measures for a new administrative rule that we're creating that deals with energy efficiency standards for new buildings that would be utilizing a planned development bonus, which is a new provision within the zoning code that was adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Vin's going to talk a little bit about the details of the administrative rule and what we're asking for, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions for you. So just as background, as you all are aware, the comprehensive plan, 2035 comprehensive plan, was adopted in actually back in December of 2016 and then made effective in May of 2018. And as part of that, we also did a code reconciliation project, as you will recall. And as a part of that package, we adopted new commercial mixed-use zoning that applied outside of the central city and gateway. And as part of that zoning package for the commercial mixed-use zones, we included a new bonus called a planned development bonus, which is in Title 33, Chapter 130, which is an option for sites over 2 acres in some of the commercial zones in the outside of the central city gateway, historic and conservation districts, and some planned districts. So what that bonus does is illustrated here. Basically, it allows additional height and the use of the bonus FAR that's allowed by our code when a project meets certain criteria and has a certain level of review. The planned development bonus is intended to allow a developer with a large site to better utilize the FAR that we allow in our code. Anyhow, the reason for this is that they cannot effectively utilize all of the FAR that's available within the existing height limits on large sites. So this planned development bonus would require a design commission review, a type 3 design commission review, where they're reviewing the site plan, massing, height transitions and other transitions to adjacent neighborhoods and connections to the street system and the pedestrian system. It would require inclusionary housing as part of our inclusionary housing ordinance. The planned development bonus also requires, as part of the site plan, an allocation of 15% of the site area as a privately owned but publicly accessible park or plaza area that would be on the site. And then the final component, which we're talking about today, is it requires energy efficient buildings. And Bureau of Planning and Sustainability at the time of the adoption indicated that we would be developing administrative rules that set the parameters for these energy efficient buildings. We've been in process of doing that. Vin's going to explain that a little bit more in detail. And as we got into the process, we learned a little bit more about the complexities of it and are here to talk about some compliance and enforcement measures that we think are appropriate. So I'm going to hand it over to Vin.
Sure, some additional background here. The draft administrative rule was created with a working group of architects, developers, and building energy professionals. It was also informed by a public comment period and a public hearing on May 9th, 2018. So to achieve that height bonus, buildings would have to be 50 to 70% more energy efficient than a conventional or typical building in the city currently. These energy efficiency targets are in alignment with the Energy Trust of Oregon's Path to Net Zero program and incentives. When a project comes forward to apply for a building permit, then they would present to BPS for compliance that the design of the building meets the energy efficiency target. Because the building permit, though, at the beginning isn't necessarily how the building turns out, there can be value engineering along the way. We also have an as-built design EUI. So the compliance enforcement mechanism actually kicks in about 2 years later, within 2 years later. And so the project, or the owner of the building at that time, would have to demonstrate that the as-built design EUI or the actual, or as-built design of energy performance or the actual performance of that building meets that energy target that was established. Next, I'd like to talk about the penalty proposed for noncompliance, because we want to assure that the penalty is substantial if, for some reason, which would be uncommon, but for some reason a building project has decided to value engineer out something along the way during the building permitting process. So an example of that might be like if a building proposed initially solar panels to achieve the energy efficiency target and then later decided through the building permit process that the solar panels would no longer be part of the project.
Get that set up.
So the example we have here is a multifamily building and a commercial office building. So you can get a sense for what type of numbers we're talking about here for the enforcement compliance penalty. The example is a city block, 40,000 square feet in its footprint, 10 stories high, because the bonus would bring a building up to, could potentially bring a building up to 10 stories from about 5 or 6 floors. So at 400,000 square feet, we looked at the project valuation, which is the numbers that BDS uses for their permitting process, their International Code Council building valuation tables that are developed across all jurisdictions, tend to be slightly lower than actual, or significantly lower than actual design costs and construction costs. For a project of this size, we wanted to look at what would be the energy efficiency cost premium to meet the energy targets that are proposed. And so you can see that in the next line there for both the multifamily and office buildings. So we wanted to assure that whatever compliance penalty we have, that it approaches that number and as an adequate incentive to not assume that a building could purchase the height by not meeting the standards. And so there's a range in the penalty from 0.5% to 5% of the project valuation. And that range is depending on how close they come to meeting the energy efficiency target. Generally, we don't expect buildings to reach this point. I think a project would come through the door, they're seeking the bonus, they know that they could receive a penalty, and we also know that these buildings can already be built, and we expect the project teams to move forward. But if for some reason they do not pursue the energy target, and they've already received their height, we need to assure that there's a significant compliance penalty.
So with that, what we're requesting today, we'd be happy to answer any questions council has about this. But we're asking you to adopt the ordinance we've proposed that would approve the compliance enforcement approach that we've outlined today and that penalty, which is significantly more substantial than any of the other zoning enforcement penalties that we have on the books, hence why we're asking for this approval. Authorize BPS to periodically amend the administrative rule as we see the need to. And we can come back to council with the details of an enforcement approach if that changes at all. And then also in concert with this, because this would be implemented through as a zoning violation if there were a violation that were identified, we would need to amend the enforcement fee and penalty schedule that is a part of the BDS package of Title III, and that's included in your packet as well.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate that this is a sticky or tricky issue to figure out how to manage. But isn't the penalty, shouldn't it be more related to the value of the increased square footage rather than the cost of the energy? Because if you obviously $4 million is a lot of money, but if you're making $4 million a year more because you've got 55 feet more in building, and that's an ongoing benefit, isn't that what's going to dissuade people from cheating or value engineering out?
That's a great question. And one of the reasons we didn't gear it on that was that the FAR that we're allowing here is not really increasing on a site. It just allows you to better utilize the area. So the increased height is just a better way to utilize existing floor area that you might otherwise have earned. So we decided not to go down that path initially for that reason, and the other reason that the additional construction costs of this type of construction may offset some of those benefits. But it is a bit of a complex issue.
That is a very good answer in terms of not increasing the FAR.
Yeah, the maximum FAR on these sites is in a CM3 zone, for instance, is 5-to-1, which is the same as it is in the base zone with maximum bonuses with inclusionary housing as well. The issue is on large sites, you can't always effectively utilize all that FAR, and the additional height allows the flexibility to do that.
Okay, and then where will the money that's collected go to?
Right now, our understanding, that was another point of discussion as part of our process developing this rule. BPS actually considered whether we could administer this rule ourselves. We don't have the capacity to do that right now. We had discussions with BDS, and they felt that the zoning enforcement approach was a mechanism to enforce this. That's in place now, and the mechanisms are set up. So we've coordinated effectively with them. BDS would assess the penalty. Those penalties, if they were collected through their process, would go back to BDS at this point in time. We have had some discussions about potentially creating an energy efficiency fund of some sort, but we haven't fully fleshed that out at this point in time. We didn't know if the penalties would be enacted by council and move forward. We can pursue more research on that and see if we can set up a mechanism to do that, but we haven't done that to date.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing to do, and then maybe if there were affordable housing or other projects that might need some assistance to do those energy efficiency, you could use the fund for that, for example.
Okay. We can certainly research that.
A couple of questions.
Commissioner Saltzman.
So do I understand you said you would assess compliance 2 years into a project? Did I hear you say that, or did I just hear that?
Yeah, that is correct. So the initial energy performance is determined by an energy use intensity in the design model that's typical for modeling of these types of buildings. And that goes along with the building permit at the beginning, and that where they get their height approved. And then after the building is built, though, that's where we wanted to determine, for instance, if solar panels have been removed. So we wanted to have some, after the construction confirmation. So part of that is looking at the as-built design EUI, which could actually be the day after a building is completed. They could demonstrate compliance rather than wait 2 years. The reason why we have up to 2 years is because some buildings would choose to use actual performance. And so instead of us, the BPS, going and confirming the compliance, we're actually requiring the owner of the building to submit a third-party verification that it's completed. Some of those third-party verifications can be done at the day after construction when they're based on actual energy performance. Those verifications are done after a year of data. Often that first year is a year where the building is settling into its design, and so they might wait for up to 2 years.
So waiting for 2 years is a way to make sure the building is really operating, the systems are operating as intended,
That's right,
as
yeah.
efficiently as intended. So I guess my question was, what happens if a building is sold in that time to somebody else and it's not complying?
Yeah, so as we have the admin rule currently set up, it's the owner of the building at that time when compliance is demonstrated. So if the building is sold, then the new owner would have to demonstrate that compliance.
I'd add that as part of the Design Commission review, there'll be a condition of approval that subsequent buildings built under this plan development would be subject to, the energy efficiency requirements. So there's a history that goes along with the projects as well.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and this is recorded somewhere? I mean, a prospective purchaser of a building would easily encounter this encumbrance on the property?
I believe we have a covenant that goes along with it as well.
Yeah, there'd be a covenant recorded at Multnomah County. So the covenant would last up to 20 years.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just fearful that, we're going to see a subsequent owner say, well, nobody told me about this, and, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you got sounds like you got a pretty well thought out.
We've tried to put in those safeguards, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Very good. Any further questions? Any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have one person signed up, Maggie.
Thank you. Are you Maggie?
Signed up.
That's you. Come on up.
I'm going to pass.
Very good. This is the first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, please, 1129.
Adopt a new comprehensive financial management policy, FYN 2.18, interfund lending.
This new comprehensive financial management policy will improve internal controls and transparency of the city's internal lending process. This policy will enable the city to use its own internal liquidity when available, rather than rely on short-term bank loans or public borrowings. I request Bureau Director's support for early notification to the City Treasurer of their Bureau's funding needs. And with us today to talk about this is, of course, Jennifer Cooperman. Welcome and thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Jennifer Cooperman, Chief Financial Officer and Director of the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. I'm here today to present a new comprehensive financial management policy, FIN 218, on interfund lending. The need for this new CFMP became apparent to me this past summer when BRFS was asked to assist the Portland Housing Bureau to borrow funds on a short-term basis to facilitate their purchase of a new property. While an interfund loan was determined to be the most expedient and favorable interim financing option available, I could not find any written guidelines regarding the process, documentation, authorization, or oversight responsibility. This CFMP is designed to remedy those concerns. The CFMP went out citywide for 2 weeks of comment, and what is before you reflects the comments that were received. I want to thank the city employees who took the time to read the CFMP and submit comments and make the final product better than what was initially shared with them. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this new comprehensive financial management policy.
I'm all for it. Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up. Oh. Sure.
And it's okay this time, Dee, but please in the future, if people could sign up in advance, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I just have one question. I just read the resolution. It is a resolution. I just want to make sure that if there's ever any interfund loan, that it did read like this, but there's going to be an ordinance presented at City Council before any funds are loaned across bureaus. I think I read that in the resolution. I just want to confirm that that will happen.
That is correct, and the CFO is nodding in affirmation. Good question. Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning.
My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity XX1 PDX. One of the things I noticed on this is that you will be charging principal and interest on these loans. And I was just curious now, so I have a more clear understanding on this interfund loan. That would be taking money from another bureau, if I'm correct, on what we're talking about this, to where maybe Parks wants to do something and they say, hey, I want to do an interfund loan to get a little additional money. I hear that maybe the Portland Housing Bureau might have some money, so I'll send in a application to see if I can get approved. And then I'm going to charge a certain amount of interest on this, which my understanding would be going back to the original bureau possibly on that payment. But I guess where I get a little bit hesitation on this is that, as you know, when the public is looking over the budgets and certain amount of money is supposed to go here, certain amount of money is supposed to go here, let's look at what's going to happen with this money. Let's make sure we have everything in line. And then all of a sudden from another bureau, I'm requesting $500,000 over here. So it kind of takes everything away from overlooking that budget.
So it's a great question, but we're not talking about interfund lending on general fund appropriation. We're talking about mostly things like reserve accounts and other encumbered accounts that we're borrowing from. But I think we can ask Jennifer, but I don't think the primary purpose here is to move general fund appropriations around. I think it's to tap other encumbered funds like replacement funds and other things that sometimes get fully subscribed and can take a loan. And the interest is designed to hold them harmless, so to make sure they get a return on the investment.
Thank you for the clarity on that, and I think there's some other issues to make sure it is clear on exactly where that money would be coming from that particular bureau. And also,
I think, if I could,
yes.
What I hear you saying is, if we go through a budget exercise where we say housing gets so much of general fund, and then the next thing we're doing is transferring that to another bureau through an intergovernment, it could potentially undercut what we've just done through the budget process. I don't think that's the intention here.
Because, and I think we're both on the same mindset there, is that what my biggest concern is what happens if that loan for some reason can't get paid back?
Right.
And then we come up short over here. So I'm just kind of looking at it from above to make sure that we don't end up taking from one bureau and not being able to replace it back in a reasonable time frame. So anyway, that was my concern, and I think Commissioner Fish offered me some clarity in that area. So,
and why don't we ask Jennifer to come back and just confirm that, because I think you raised an important point.
Very good, thank you.
You did a great job answering those questions. This is meant not to undercut the budget process. This is meant to be an alternative way to use idle funds that would otherwise be earning the city investment portfolio rate, and the borrower of those funds will pay that rate so that the lender is whole as to the return on their funds. And the non-payment at the end of the payment period is a concern, which is why one of the criteria is that the loans shall not be written off. If it were ever the case that the borrower bureau was not able to repay those funds, then it would come back to the budget office and to the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services to come up with another plan to ensure that the repayment can be made. There are alternatives in the public market, but this interfund lending is intended to allow us to not have to use those opportunities if we need to, but they still exist.
Thank you for a very clear explanation.
Thank you.
Very good. This is a resolution. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Well, the questions and the answers are exactly why Chief Financial Officer Jennifer Cooperman is creating this policy, to be very clear, and so that there is oversight of when bureaus do these interfund loans. So I very much appreciate that. Aye.
Fish.
Commissioner Fritz, if I could just not only agree with what you just said, but tweak it and further say that it's also why this council felt it was important to have a chief financial officer position, so that we had someone who is specifically tasked with addressing these kinds of issues and then coming to council as a whole and making the case, reporting to all 5 members of council on matters of financial policy. And I think this is yet another reason to celebrate the restoration of the CFO position. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The resolution's adopted. Thank you. Next item, 1130, please.
Amend the heavy vehicle use tax code to remove the 4-year revenue target.
Colleagues, the revenue projection for the heavy vehicle use tax, the HVT, was created based on the best available information at the time the tax was originally enacted in May of 2016. The actual revenues and the timing of these revenues varied significantly from the original projection. A substantial portion of the variance was due to the appeals process that was directed by council subsequent to the formation of the revenue projection used to set the original tax rate. To make up the variance by assessing at a higher rate in the later years of the tax, which is prescribed in current city code, would result in a material increase in the HVT rate. After considering the options and the feedback from various stakeholder groups, it was determined that the best approach would be to remove the rate adjustment provision in the code and keep the HVT rate at the same over the 4 years of the HVT. And we have a number. Thomas Lanham, I guess you're going to kick us off. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am. Thank you very much. I'm Thomas Lanham. I'm the Revenue Division Director of the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services, and we have some staff here from PBOT and Revenue, should you have questions. The heavy vehicle use tax was passed by Ordinance 187743 on May 11th of 2016, just prior to a ballot initiative, Initiative 26173, passing on May 17th of 2016. The ballot initiative established a 10-cent gas tax in Portland, and the HVT, the heavy vehicle use tax, was established by the City Council and is 2.8% of the Oregon weight mile tax paid by heavy vehicles. So PBOT and the Revenue Division created a joint forecast for the heavy vehicle use tax, or the HVT, based on the best available information at the time the tax was enacted. Based on this analysis, we believed a rate of 2.8% would yield about $10 million over 4 years. $10 million was the target revenue figure based on a PBOT analysis of the road use split between heavy vehicles paying the HVT and passenger vehicles paying the gas tax. In hindsight, the actual tax rate needed to meet the $10 million target is about 4.5%. The projection was overstated for 2 primary reasons. First, it was a new tax, and PBOT and Revenue were working with imperfect information and had to make assumptions about who would ultimately pay and how much. And second, subsequent to the ordinance passing, at the direction of council, PBOT and Revenue created an appeals process for de minimis or immaterial driving activity in Portland that resulted in substantial reduction in revenue. Because all parties recognized the projection was based on imperfect information in 2016, the 2016 ordinance also granted the Revenue Division the administrative authority to adjust the tax rate in later years to meet the $10 million target. We are here before you today to have that code provision removed because the rate required to hit the target represents a 60% increase above the tax rate, and that's not what anyone intended back in 2016. PBOT management, as you stated earlier, Mayor, consulted with stakeholder groups, primarily the Fixing Our Streets Oversight Committee and the Portland Freight Committee. After considering options such as increasing the tax rate, extending the tax for a 5th year, or a combination thereof, PBOT management and stakeholder groups unanimously determined the best approach is to remove the rate adjustment provision in the code and keep the rate the same over the 4 years of the HVT. So again, the ordinance before you today would accomplish that. And again, we have staff here from PBOT and Revenue to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you for the presentation that outlines the problem. I'm concerned about the outreach and what we're having discussions with the community, because it was very contentious back in May of 2016 about getting this tax passed. The council members signed a letter saying that the trucks would pay their fair share, and that's what this was calculated to do. So Commissioner Stoltzman, Commissioner Fisher, and I each signed that letter, and that was basically a promise to the voters. So knowing that this is not a permanent, that the gas tax itself is not a permanent measure, it's got to go back to the voters, what impact does this change have on whether the voters are going to believe that, in fact, the trucks are not paying their fair share?
Well, it would be difficult for me to speculate about what voters might think, but I think there's a couple of things here, and I'll defer to PBOT as well on a piece of this, but the statewide HVT actually was increased subsequent to the establishment of the city's HVT, and there's some state-shared revenues on that, so we actually have seen, or are expecting to see, some increased revenues related to that that may partially or may fully offset this reduction. We don't have that data yet.
Well, when will you have that data?
You talk about House Bill 2017?
Because
yes,
if that is the case, then that should factor into the total, the 10 million that was expected to be made. So I'd like to have those numbers before I vote on this.
If I may.
Yeah.
If I may, Commissioner Fritz, those numbers were reviewed by PBOT. So we took, when we built our new forecast, looking at what would be the maximum rate required or the minimum rate required in order to make us whole on that $10 million that we were supposed to bring in over the 4-year period, we reviewed it against ODOT statewide weight mile forecast, which does now countenance the increase under House Bill 2017, so the 25% increase that came in January 1st of this year. And with that in mind, we were still short, and that would still require the increase of up to 60% compared to what the current payments are from our HVT payers.
Yeah, so that just says that the trucks are not paying their fair share.
It certainly says that we would need a higher rate in order for them to bring in the $10 million that was required.
I think this is something that we need to be very careful about, because I think the gas tax itself has been a great success. It has not raised gas prices in Portland compared with adjacent jurisdictions. I live close to adjacent jurisdictions, and the gas prices, there's no noticeable increase. So I think it's been very effective, and certainly the Fixing Our Street projects that are going on all over the city are crucial infrastructure, and we need to be able to continue to get that revenue. So we should be very careful about doing anything that's going to impact whether or not the voters would reapprove the gas tax. And I'm just trying to think in my own mind, what would the voters' pamphlet state in that case? Because people would come in and say, well, the trucks are not doing what they said they were going to do.
And I don't have a clean answer for you. I think, obviously that's a policy question for the council. I think the split that was contemplated relative to road use was something like 87-13, 87%, smaller vehicles that would pay the gas tax and 13% heavy vehicles. We could certainly do some math to see what the delta is here, where we stand now. In other words, I think we might be closer to something like 90, and I'm going out on a limb here, but maybe it's 90-10, something along those lines. So
I think that's important, because even though 60% is obviously a lot, it's 60% of a small number. So, the other way to argue it is that we set it too low in the first place.
Yes, that's fair. And I think that's why the council gave the Revenue Division the authority to make this adjustment without coming back, because we all knew the rate was our best guess at the time. It was just that it was much lower than anyone anticipated it at the 2.8%.
So another approach would be to have a resolution for public comment that would say we're going to increase the truck tax rate to get the revenue, and then we would hear from the truckers, we would hear from the public.
Certainly that's an option the council has.
Any further questions? Public testimony, Carla?
Yes, we have 2 people signed up, Jennifer Rollins and Maggie.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that I think all vehicles on oil should be taxed, and we should take that tax and put it towards electric chargers for electric cars and bicycle lanes for scooters and bicycles and alternative forms of transportation and pedestrian walkways and all sorts of other ways to get around. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Rollins, and I chair the Fixing Our Streets Citizen Oversight Committee. And so I wanted to be here today to just give a little bit more background on our discussions, because we did have a long and heated discussion about some of the issues that Commissioner Fritz was just raising. We reached our unanimous decision as kind of a compromise because, there were some unintended outcomes of the heavy vehicle use tax the way that it was put together. But one of our biggest hesitations is that not only did you make a promise to voters, but there's been a long history. Ever since there was a gas tax, there's been a weight mile tax associated with it, and they've always gone in concert based on the impact of different types of vehicles. And it was such an important issue to voters that it's actually, the state is required to do that as part of the Constitution of the state of Oregon. Obviously, the city is not bound by that, and you can make your own decision. But, it was, as Commissioner Fritz alluded, a contentious topic. There was a lawsuit filed against the ballot measure. Making this change now is really abandoning that commitment. I personally, not on behalf of the committee, personally would argue that 13% is too low. And I'd be happy to talk about that another time in another 3 minutes. But you're really walking away from that. And the committee's sense was that we would be willing to support this time in interest of getting projects done and fixing our streets if the freight community would be willing to change their list of projects so that only the money that was coming in was going to the freight community's chosen projects. In interest of keeping fixing our streets really successful and the projects going and having a great outcome at the end of this 4-year pilot project. So I wanted to share that background because I think it's important as you talk about this issue.
Thank you.
I'm just puzzled why, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Could you just tell us a bit more about why did you come to consensus that, you just gave some arguments about why not, and then if there's less money for freight projects, those are some of the most important to people in communities. We hear from folks in St. John's and elsewhere all the time that those freight projects are really important for neighborhood safety as well as for getting the freight moving.
Sure. We were concerned with having ongoing support, and we did find it compelling that the rate was such a big change, and it was something that was really, and it was an unanticipated result. The number of appeals wasn't part of the original thinking, the committee is not just made up of neighborhood folks. It also has representatives from the freight community. Our committee is supposed to represent the entire spectrum. So I think the sense was that this compromise, that the freight community rethink what their priorities were and tie the spending to the amount that they've collected was a way to keep the committee, unified and, moving forward.
It's really helpful that you came to explain this. Thank you.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Well, I was going to just agree with Commissioner Fritz's assessment. I mean, I heard this issue when I was PBOT commissioner, and I probably signed off on this approach. But the more I think about it and the more we discuss it, I feel that this could be an action that would come back to haunt us. And I guess I'm looking for maybe a little more daylight on it.
Well, I wrote a great letter to the PBOT leadership, and I'd be happy to share that with you.
Okay, yeah. But this is a first reading?
It's a first reading.
Okay.
Right? So there's time to take some action.
Okay. Yeah, if you could share that letter, it'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you for taking time to join us today.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful. And I join with two of my colleagues in having some concerns about this, and I'm going to need more information as well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item is 1131, a second reading. Carla?
Vacate a portion of an unnamed road east of Northeast 160th Avenue and south of Northeast Halsey Street, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
Colleagues, this is a second reading of an ordinance. There's already been public testimony and presentations on this ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. And let's take care of the other second reading while we're at it, 1134.
Assess property for sidewalk repair for the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Next item, 1132.
Authorize a 5-year grant agreement with Portland Parks Foundation for operational costs associated with fundraising and development services for Portland Parks and Recreation programs and projects for an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, we know that a world-class park system depends on strong public-private partnerships. The Portland Parks Foundation is Portland Parks and Recreation's chief philanthropic partner. This fiscal year, the City Council budgeted and allocated $100,000 to the foundation, and today's ordinance authorizes a grant agreement for those funds. This agreement will also provide a mechanism for future years if there is an opportunity to provide further financial support. Our deep thanks to the foundation and outgoing Executive Director, Jeff Anderson. In fiscal year 2016-17, we granted $50,000 and the foundation turned it into $2 million. That's a pretty good investment, that's a pretty good return on an investment for the public dollar. We look forward to our continued work together. Now we will have a brief presentation from Kia Selly, Interim Director, Portland Parks and Recreation, Jeff Anderson, Executive Director, Portland Parks Foundation, and Mary Rubel, Board Chair, Portland Parks Foundation. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, I'm Kia Selly, Interim Director of Portland Parks and Recreation. As Commissioner Fish stated, the purpose of this ordinance is to officially release the $100,000 that was allocated during the regular budget process for this fiscal year. The grant agreement is for 5 years, and it will allow for potential future allocations, specifically a maximum of the same $100,000 per year, should funds be available. We are pleased that this grant for operational support will allow the foundation to continue to support our Bureau's work through fundraising for capital projects like the Barbara Walker Footbridge and for programs like Summer Free for All. As you know, as a private philanthropic organization, many individuals make personal donations as well as do their planned or estate giving through our foundation. Additionally, the foundation is able to apply for grants at private family foundations. This is funding that would not be available to our projects or programs otherwise. Now it's my honor to introduce Jeff Anderson. It is his last day on the job. He is the Executive Director of the Portland Parks Foundation, and Mary Rubel, the Board Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kia. So, Mayor Wheeler, members of council, I am Jeff Anderson, Executive Director of the Portland Parks Foundation. The foundation was created by the city in 2001 as part of PPNR's 2020 vision planning process. And as noted by Commissioner Fish, we're the chief philanthropic partner with the aim of attracting private gifts to support public parks. So as we approach 2020, this strategy has really proven to be a major success. PPF, the foundation, has raised nearly $14 million for parks and programs, along with over $3 million more for our own operating support. We've supported dozens of capital projects along with such annual programs as recreational scholarships, community gardens, and summer free-for-all. And the handout I think you all just got reflects some of a selection of those projects. We're committed to extending this record of effective work. Commissioner Fish alluded to our most recent capital campaign, building the Barbara Walker footbridge over West Burnside to enhance public safety and the natural experience of the Wildwood Trail. This project has attracted over $2 million in private gifts and grants to complement the city's and Metro's commitment of just over $1 million in public funds. The campaign, like the foundation itself, is steered by volunteers who believe in the importance of attracting private philanthropic dollars for public good. We believe that this project and others throughout our history exemplify how a fundraising partnership like this one should work. Your allocation of operating support will allow PPF to spend more time raising private funds for special park projects that might not otherwise be completed, rather than spending that time raising money for our own daily operations. And we deeply appreciate that commitment. As I've stressed in past testimony to the Council, parks are essential city infrastructure in our view. Research tells us they produce physical health, mental health, and stronger communities, not to mention the very oxygen we breathe. No other city priority or infrastructure motivates private donors the way that parks do. Public parks build a sense of place, and they help to drive broader community development. This is why they inspire the kind of grassroots energy that drove the development of the new Cully Park in a diverse and vital but challenged neighborhood. 9 out of 10 Portlanders report using our parks every year. They generate goodwill, they generate volunteer commitment, and with appropriate and equitable investment from city leaders, that can in turn generate greater trust in our public institutions, something we sorely need. I'd even venture to say that investment in public spaces is one important strategy in sustaining democracy itself. So in closing, I want to extend again our appreciation, especially to our 3 sitting commissioners who have led parks during the Foundation's history, Commissioners Saltzman, Fritz, and Fish. Thank you for all your efforts, and once again, our heartfelt thanks to the whole Council for your support. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you have, but meanwhile, I would like to turn the floor over to Foundation's Board Chair, Mary Rubel.
Thank you, and good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Mary Rubel, Chair of the Board of the Portland Parks Foundation. I'm also past Chair of the Portland Parks Board and actually have been involved with parks for over 18 years. We believe wholeheartedly in public-private partnership at the Foundation, and that is what has helped us to create one of the nation's best park systems, and thereby one of the nation's most livable cities. In adding to Jeff's remarks today, I would like to simply say thank you for your support and to note the importance of leverage through the Foundation. My career has been in the financial services industry, and I tend to look at the numbers. In the 17 years since Portland Park Foundation's founding, the return on investment of operating dollars has been 4-to-1 private dollars to city money. The return doesn't occur every single year, but it does occur over the long term. During our recent campaign for the footbridge, as Jeff mentioned, it has been even more dramatic. In the 18 months following the first $50,000 grant from Portland Parks and Recreation to the Foundation, which is the only previous instance of operating support, we've raised over $2 million, which is a significant return on investment. Nearly 1,000 individuals, foundations, and businesses have made gifts to support this public safety measure and to beautify our city. In addition to its own fundraising, the Foundation leverages volunteer time and funds for other projects that benefit Portland. For example, Portland Park Foundation's consulting support and a small seed grant last fall of $2,500 to the Friends of Mount Tabor have been leveraged through a volunteer-led campaign to raise over $100,000. Again, a very good return on investment. We are now supporting a permanent part-time position at Mount Tabor to educate, train, and coordinate volunteers to remove invasive species, which is an important issue in our city. We also are contributing to watershed health. The kind of work that we're doing is dedicated to the City of Portland and through our Parks Friends groups. We can accomplish amazing things when the city and the Foundation work closely together, and we pledge to continue building our partnership with PP&R that will lead to great dividends for Portland. In closing, I would like to thank Jeff Anderson, who, as many have noted, this is his last day. Jeff has been a terrific executive director of the foundation. Under Jeff, the foundation has gained prominence, breadth, and traction in the city, and we are poised for a great future. We look forward to continued partnerships. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Fritz?
I have a question for Commissioner Fish. Will the 100,000 for next year be a line item in the parks budget request?
So let me put that to Kia. That's a great question.
Because the mayor graciously included the 100,000 that we're actually giving out today, but this is for an ongoing for 5 years. So that will need to come back to council as a decision, right?
So it would come back to council as a decision through the budget process.
So it'll be called out as a line item?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Very good. Public testimony?
I have a-
I'm sorry. I apologize. Commissioner Fish and then Commissioner Saltzman.
Dan, go first.
So I think maybe Jeff said, since the foundation's inception, it's raised 14 million roughly?
14 million in addition to funds we raised for our operational budget.
Which is about 300,000, you said? Yeah.
The operating budget this year is about 385,000. The total raised for operations over our history has been a little over 3 million for operations.
Okay. Yeah, I guess this sounds like a good investment on our part with a good return, as Mary said. I am a little leery about sort of the precedent being set here in that other friends of organizations might look to us for operational support too, and I just don't think that's how the playbook's written. You know, foundations are supposed to raise money to operate themselves and raise money for the mission or cause. But I appreciate this, and it seems like a modest amount, but let's keep it a modest, well-leveraged amount. Thank you.
Can I just comment? I think what Commissioner Saltzman just said is very important, and it is my view that when we have designated a particular entity as our official partner, it's different than if you are in a less official capacity. So, for example, I have felt it was appropriate for us to give some assistance to the Portland Rose Festival Foundation because we have tasked them to be the official festival for the city of Portland. Likewise, in the original 2020 vision plan, we established the Parks Foundation Board as our official partner in raising funds. I think Commissioner Saltzman makes an excellent point, though, that we should be very judicious in the use of, in essence, priming the pump with our partner organizations. And my test would be, at a minimum, is it an officially sanctioned and sponsored organization where we've established that unique relationship? Because I think, as he suggests and implies, and I agree with, we can't just provide seed money for all of our friends groups. So I appreciate your comments. I just wanted to ask Mary, the board chair, this is Jeff's last day. Do you expect sometime in the future to have an announcement about the future leadership?
I do, thank you. We've run a very inclusive search process that included people from the city as well as our board and other park supporters. We're very close to an announcement, hope to have that in the next couple of weeks, and we had some excellent candidates.
Well, oh, you want to take a picture? So, Mayor, I'm getting signals here. After we take a vote on this, Mayor, could we get a photograph with Jeff and Mary?
I certainly have no objection to that. Does that complete the questions?
Yeah.
Do we have public testimony on this item, Carla?
Yes, we have 3 people signed up.
Very good.
We have Maggie, Shedrick J. Wilkins, and Lightning.
Maggie, would you start us off, please? Please, yeah, thank you.
Okay. As far as I'm concerned, any city money going to the parks right now you can fill all the parks in with concrete, build a wall, whatever, because right now with all the homeless people and the people being kicked out of shelters or not wanting to go into shelters because they're so unhealthy, you've got transgender people who can't use the bathroom in Directors Park because you've closed it, and elderly and disabled. The woman who was kicked out of Salvation Army because her bed wasn't paid for last week, last Monday or Tuesday night she was kicked out. She tried to advocate for herself as the Peggy Semelinsky of some sexual assault interim director program she was with, said people do, and she was taken out by the police. So she was out for a week out in the rain, and she was at Directors Park. We tried to get her in somewhere for 3 hours. I was on the phone in Directors Park, and then finally I had to leave. I had to go back to Safes, and somebody stayed with her, Alexis, who also goes to county and testifies. And you know, they close. Why are we using taxpayer money when they close the bathrooms at these parks and elderly, transgender, and disabled can't use them? And they also pull the games that if the homeless come, they arrest them or chase them off, or they pull the stuff that people use to use the park there, the chessboards or the games, they'll just pull them. So let's just build a wall around all the parks and fill them in with concrete, because you're only going to let certain people use the facilities, the bathrooms. So yeah, you're arresting homeless women who come in there and scream because there's no, she needs adult protective services, and so the police come along and arrest her. You're just not doing your job.
Thank you. Good morning.
I'm Shedrick Wilkins, and it's Halloween 2018. On Halloween 2011, I toured Occupied Portland, which were 2 park blocks out here. I thought the way it was set up was very civil, very organized. They were trying to make a statement that because of the stock market crash of August 2008, there was a lot of people that lost a lot of money. And I even met students there that couldn't afford to go to PSU, so they decided to become a part of that. It was well organized. There was a group of troublemakers there. But in the future, if Trump messes up the stock market, I favor having people being housed in public parks, as was done out here. Some people claim
I second that motion.
that damage to the parks out here. I don't think so. And I think if the stock market does have problems, there is not adequate shelter. Also, Mayor, I am 50 feet from a proposed Pearl District shelter that you haven't made yet.
I second the motion about housing people in parks, because that's taxpayer money.
Thank you, but
and
that's
their
not what we're
bathroom.
talking about. Lightning, good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity XX1 PDX. Again, just from my position, I might have a concern on this money being funded for fundraising from Portland Parks Foundation. Now, again, where my concern is that it's my understanding, and I might be wrong on this, is that Portland Parks Foundation was originally set up by the Portland Parks and Recreation. Now, when we talk about independence from a nonprofit 501c3 to the city itself, again, as I've stated to Mayor Wheeler, is that I like to have a real clear line there, and there's no looking at it. But if I could finish, Commissioner Fish, one of the concerns I have here is that, for instance, if I'll use an example here, when you use the term official nonprofit to work alongside of us for the private and public partnership. Well, I'd like to, as the Lightning Parks Foundation, to work alongside the city. Now, since you already have an official nonprofit working alongside you, raising money, working along side by side, literally even doing PR to where what they can say, you're going to say this, or what you can do, we're going to be in contact with you immediately on that. That's not much independence. It's kind of like I had problems with what's called an employee and independent contractor. And I had someone come here and say, you're saying they're an independent contractor, but you're telling them every little thing to do and everything to do. We think they're your employee, so let's pay all the other benefits and you make sure you call them an employee. And I ran into a problem on that, and I'm seeing the same thing here. I mean, this nonprofit or foundation was pretty much set up by the city. It's called the official for the parks. And how does that, when we talk about equity for anyone else, say some people in Northeast Portland, when we're talking to Colley, and they want to get in the middle of this, they want to be part of this, they want to be that official nonprofit. Well, when you have this set up in this manner from the city, and my only other concern I have on this situation is that when we're talking conflict of interest, no city officer or employee during his tenure of 2 years thereafter shall have any interest, direct or indirect, in any grant agreements or proceeds thereof. City officer or employee who selected grantee, participated in the award of this agreement or managed this agreement shall not seek the promise of employment from the grantee or be employed by the grantee during the term of the agreement. So here's a problem I have. If you're the city and you create the nonprofit, how do you stay out of that, you know, that kind of that shadow of the conflict of interest situation? And I'm just saying, using an example of independent contractor, employee status, City of Portland, nonprofit. So that's my concern. And as an ex-state treasurer, Mayor, I know that you watch these things very close, probably more close than anyone else would. So that's why I'm just bringing my concerns at this time. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Taxpayers need to stop paying for discrimination against
Thank you. Please call the roll.
disabled, and
Fritz.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Commissioner Fish, for bringing this forward. I really appreciate Jeff Anderson's comments both here and at the City Budget Forum last year, when I think you single-handedly turned things around. And I will finally today get around to posting your speech on my blog. Thank you, because you really do understand the value of parks. It's very difficult to raise money for operating expenses, and we don't want to be taking so big of a cut off of the donations for specific projects that then seems to be unreasonable. So I think this is a good use of taxpayers' money. I will say, though, that I think you should be adding the $68 million that we raised through the Fix Our Parks bond measure to your tally of the things that the foundation helped get done, because the foundation volunteers and staff drove me to over 100 meetings to spread the word about that and to get that bond measure passed. And we're seeing the great results all over our city today. I will appreciate it if we can have the annual report from the foundation come to council so that we can see what leverage this money is getting, because I know it's going to continue, and people do value our parks. It's not that there's just so many things that go on in parks that people really care about, but the behind-the-scenes work they ought to care about, because that's what makes the rest of it happen. Aye.
Fish.
Jeff Anderson, thank you very much for your service to the Parks Foundation. We have a little token of our esteem, which we'll give you when we take a photograph in a minute. Mary, thank you for your leadership at the Parks Foundation, and I have a long history with the foundation, and I can assure all my friends that they operate quite independently of the city and have their own leadership structure, and they make their own decisions. And I'm also very proud that of the projects that you've raised money for, one of them included the Cully Park in the most diverse census tract in our city, which is at the heart of Cully. So it speaks to the values of the organization and where they raise money and invest money. I enthusiastically support this ordinance. Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I also want to thank Jeff Anderson for your leadership at the foundation. Done a good job, and Mary for your ongoing leadership on the board. Thank you very much. Aye.
Wheeler.
Thanks, Jeff. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted.
Take a quick picture, Mayor.
We have enough.
So we're going to get photographs? No, Mayor, let's just do it back here. Joe, thank you. Kia, did you want to text Mary? Mary, would you go on? Thank you. I shaved it off the other day. Thank you. This is small.
All right, is this everyone? Let's get in closer. A little closer. All right.
On the count of three, say discrimination.
Just look here and smile. Thank you. Keep smiling, keep smiling. Awesome.
She's become our best unofficial photographer at City Hall. That's not even in her job description. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah.
Okay, one more matter.
$11.33, please, Carla.
Amend the Parks and Recreation System Development Charge Code to clarify language and improve program implementation.
Commissioner Fish.
Okay, before we begin, I'm going to hand out a letter that we received from the Parks Board supporting the matter before us, and we'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Fish. My name is Sarah Huggins, and I'm the Parks System Development Charge, or SDC, Program Manager. I very much appreciate this opportunity to bring forward suggested updates to the Parks System Development Charge Code, which is Chapter 1713. This code section outlines implementation of the Parks SDC program. The Parks SDC program has been in place since 1998, and throughout the years, the code has been updated periodically to improve program implementation. Our goals for this particular code update were to ensure that code language is clear and precise, to correct inconsistent and in some cases outdated code language or references, to simplify code language. So for example, in some cases we had paraphrased other sections of code and instead we are providing a link or a reference to that code instead of restating. And then under Commissioner Fitz's leadership, we also focused on improvements to the SDC credit process. And in this context, SDC credits are things that the Bureau can award for either a donation or property or the construction of a park improvement, qualified public improvement. And these credits can be used to offset the building permit fee. In particular, updates to the SDC credit section included updates to the SDC Credit Review Committee membership. That's a public group that advises and makes a recommendation on the award or denial of SDC credit requests. Updates to review and the review and recommendation process, including provisions about making meeting materials and recommendations and decisions all available to the public through the e-files program and on the Parks SDC website as well. Updates to decision-making authorities for SDC credits. So in current code, the director was the decision maker on SDC credit awards. And in the proposed updates before you, the director could still make a recommendation on credits if the value is $250,000 or less, but for credit awards above $250,000, that would now be a commissioner decision. And in any cases where the public SDC Credit Review Committee was not all in agreement on a recommendation, the director and commissioner would confer with one another before making a decision. We also proposed updates to the appeals process. Given the additional levels of review and input for the recommended award of credits, we are proposing that appeals of credit award decisions be limited to the applicant. Since SDC credits are directly tied to a building permit, our concern was that opening that door and making appeals available to anyone could delay someone's building permit process. So they would have to pay a fee or get the credits awarded to be used against a building permit before they can get their building permit issued. And we are also updating the appeal process. So previous language or current language allowed appeals of an administrator decision to go to the hearings officer, and then appeals of a director SDC credit award decision to go to council within 30 days. And so what we're proposing in these amendments are to change the decision-making threshold so decisions that were made by the director would be appealed to the commissioner and then to city council. So we're adding the commissioner as a step in that appeal process as well. The code updates, I want to be clear, are not changing the SDC methodology, the rate structure, or the council-adopted SDC CIP list of eligible projects. Preparing these code updates was a very collaborative effort, and I would like to thank everyone who reviewed the updates and offered feedback. In particular, I'd like to thank the Parks Board, the League of Women Voters. I think Debbie is here with us today. Thank you. The Development Review Advisory Committee, many park staff, Commissioner Fish, who really championed the development of these SDC code updates, and Commissioner Fish, who reviewed and supported bringing them before you today, staff from the City Attorney's Office and Auditor's Office who all reviewed these. Thank you.
So, Mayor, if I could, Sarah Huggins has done an outstanding job of just giving you an overview of this. I had a letter blocking my introductory comments, and so at the risk of appearing ungrateful, I would like to read one paragraph here. These code changes, in our view, will increase transparency around park systems development charge credits, include decision-making thresholds, appeal processes, and the committee review process. And they are almost exclusively the work of my predecessor, Commissioner Amanda Fritz, and the stakeholders that she engaged. So I want to thank Commissioner Fritz for preparing these improvements. This matter was taken back to my office during the transition so I could get up to speed on it. We're now bringing this back forward, largely unchanged, for council approval. And again, thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for the work you put into this.
Great. Is there any further discussion on this item? Public testimony?
Yes, we have two people signed up.
Thank you, Carla.
Shedrick J. Wilkins and Debbie Iona.
Welcome.
On the similar topic of which I had discussed on 1132, I, in the future, will mention one person's name who's a great homeless advocate is Ezra Mubarak. And I know in January what happened in the park, it was a federal park, in which he tried to establish a homeless encampment, and it was slammed down. I'm not here to say that that was a perfect place to do that, but again, I favor putting homeless people in parks in a very controlled fashion. I am a supporter of Joanne Hardesty, and I know that she may put Ezra Mubarak on her staff. And Ezra Mubarak and I met about the Homeless Bill of Rights in 2011, in which I met you, Mayor Wheeler, and you were trying to get the Multnomah County Health Center built. Now, it will be built, and it may send and dispatch paramedics to homeless people who are cold or something, but I understand homeless people will not be allowed to stay there. But it will orchestrate and be kind of like a dispatch center for people, and that that building will be involved with making sure they get someplace, a hospital. It's about ready to be finished. And again, I think it's really a discredit to the city. At the bus station, there are African Americans and other homeless people begging me for money. And I thought the navigation center would move people in under the Broadway Bridge or move them away. I do know that Chinatown Neighborhood Association is very concerned about homeless people sleeping right on the bus station property. You know, and in the future, when that health center is made, they don't want people doing that. You're going to have to move them. They don't want county employees working there accosted by people sleeping on the sidewalk at the bus station. Again, these are things I have read. And so next year, one thing about Ezra Mubarak, I don't get in the Oregonian and I don't get in Willamette Week, and he does. So even though I talk here, but I strongly support, and Joanne Hardesty, some people claim she's a troublemaker. She's not a troublemaker. She just sees things that aren't working. And Ezra Mubarak is the perfect eyes, and he has the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I hope that Joanne Hardesty criticizes you as a mayor, that there are people sleeping, begging, and doing some stuff, and let's try to solve it.
Thank you. That would be a refreshing change, people criticizing the mayor. Thank you, Cedric. Good morning.
Hi. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Debbie Iona, representing the League of Women Voters of Portland. The League has been actively involved in the Parks SDC program since its inception. We offered input on the original ordinance and serve on the Credit Review Committee and the periodic SDC Methodology Update Task Force. For the most part, the League supports the proposed code amendments, but we have significant concerns. The League strongly objects to eliminating the public's right to appeal SDC credits granted by the Parks Bureau Director or Commissioner in charge. This right provides an important safeguard that should be maintained. The proposed code allows only the developer applying for a credit to appeal the decision. Lead staff, as you've just heard from Sarah, in the code revision effort explained to us that there is concern members of the public might use the right to appeal as a way to slow development. There has been, however, only one appeal during the 20 years the Parks SDC program has been in place. The League filed that appeal in a case in which we believed an SDC credit was granted inappropriately. We took the appeal to the city hearings officer and then circuit court. After the applicant requested settlement discussions, our appeal was resolved with a $50,000 donation from the developer to the Parks Foundation. Clearly, with only one appeal in 20 years, this proposal to deny the public the right to appeal is unnecessary. Furthermore, the League opposes changing the party authorized to hear SDC credit appeals from the city hearings officer to city council. Given the interaction city council members sometimes have with developers, the hearings officer will be seen by the public as a more neutral party and should continue to hear those appeals. The League appreciates the proposed code language outlining the Credit Review Committee process. Several years ago, we expressed concerns about the inappropriate role city staff and the applicant played in the process. Since then, we have participated in a committee meeting that followed the vastly improved process thanks to Commissioner Fritz's office. We fully support including it in the revised code. We also support the updated list of types and specific examples of organizations eligible to serve on the Credit Review Committee. In conclusion, the League believes it is essential that the public continue to have the right to appeal decisions as significant as those granting Parks SDC credits. This might be a different discussion if the existing right to appeal was being abused, but it is not. The city should stay true to maintaining the critical checks and balances we rely on to ensure credible and accountable decision-making by our leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfectly timed as well.
What, say that?
Perfectly timed.
Yeah, I practice at home. So, and then I just wanted to say one tiny thing. So I would love to stay for your discussion. Hopefully I can, but I have a 6-month-old waiting for me at home, so my daughter can go back to work. So I'm going to try, though.
Thank you so much for all of your input on this.
Oh, thanks.
Very helpful.
Debbie, I was curious, what was the appeal the League was involved in?
It was in the River District. It was Jameson Square.
Okay.
The Hoyt Street Properties applied for an SDC credit, even though the development agreement said that that property was going to be conveyed at no cost to the city. And then there was an additional layer of concern on our part because the credit application was based on the lost value for developing that property at its zoned use as far as, if it was going to be an apartment building or commercial. But there was a restriction on that property that it could only be used as parks open space, which of course brought the value down considerably. So we, kind of after winding our way through, ended up with a fairly satisfactory outcome. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Any further discussion or questions of staff? There being none, this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It
Just want to say thank you to Sarah Huggins, who's an absolute superstar.
Moves to second reading. Thank you, Sarah. We're adjourned.